Okay, I'm going to continue talking about schizoid personality disorder. It is a mental health issue, very sensitive topic. So if you have a issue with that, or if you get triggered by such topics, this is your warning for that. Okay. Okay. Now, yesterday I started talking about um, schizoid personality, what it was, and kind of, yeah, how it differed from actual schizophrenia, which was actually really interesting because to be able to differentiate the two was really helpful, because actually nobody, you wouldn't think schizoid personality and schizophrenia were that different, but they actually, they're just not the same condition. And you wouldn't necessarily get schizophrenia if you had schizoid personality. It's just not, they're just poles apart realistically. And it's only on the odd occasion that somebody with schizophrenia could possibly get schizophrenia from first being diagnosed with schizoid personality. It's just, you're more likely to get an avoidance personality, or things like that, than schizophrenia realistically. So I found that so fascinating. I loved looking into this. So I really did. I do love looking into these things. They're so incredible. Um, but there are a lot of symptoms when it comes to this. But before I talk about the symptoms, there are actually two types of schizoid personality, which I do think it's important to talk about first before I tell you the symptoms of it and what to look out for. Because understanding that there are two types of people who have schizoid personality is just as important as watching out for the symptoms and the signs that somebody would have it. Okay. So I did this, okay, I found this with the narcissistic personality as well. There were two types, the covert and the overt, which was kind of interesting. And it's the same with the schizoid personality. You've got a covert type and an overt type. So people with a covert schizoid personality will come across as really sociable. So they'll be very sociable people. They will have stable jobs. They'll be able to hold down a career. They'll make acquaintances, so they'll have, people that they'll talk to a lot. That, so they'll have work friends, but there'll be friends that they talk to inside of work. You'll have people they'll talk to in the street, so like they'll talk to their neighbours in the street. They'll associate themselves with a lot of people, but they never really have friends as such. But lots of people know who they are. You'll walk down the street and everyone will be able to tell you exactly who they are because they're really sociable. But they won't really socialise with them. Okay. So, it will seem like they know lots of people because they do. They're just acquaintances. There's no emotional bond there. They're not really friends with all these people. They can say hi to them in the street and, talk to them at work. Say hi to their neighbours. Their neighbours will know their names, but they won't know anything about them. Big difference. It's like school friends. Do you remember in school when you'd have the friends that you hung around with at school, and then you'd have those that you spoke to outside of school? So you'd have your school friends and your friends, and it's exactly the same thing. They would have all these people that they talk to, but it would never go beyond that. They're just people that they talk to. That's it. It never went beyond that to actual friendship. They don't make emotional bonds with people. They don't turn acquaintances into friends. They just don't do that. Okay. And they will keep all their feelings very private, which makes sense considering they don't like to make emotional bonds. So, you know, they're very private people, very kind of inward people, you know, even though they seem to be very sociable, very kind of, you know, yeah, nobody will really know a lot about them. You know, they can tell you, oh yeah, they're really sociable, they're a great guy, they're a great person, they're lovely. They won't know anything else about them. Nothing, nada. They work really hard, they're really great people, you can have a laugh with them, and that's it. That's as far as it goes. Yeah. It's kind of sad in a way, but kind of cool in another, because at least they're reacting to the world. Yeah, they're out there. Whereas the overt type are classed as being boring or emotionless. They prefer to have no social contact, none, nada, nothing. They will spend a lot of time alone, completely. Hardly anybody will have any contact with them. They like it that way. So on one hand, you've got the covert type who will be extremely sociable. Everybody will know their name. They will tell you that they're a great guy, they're a great person, they're this, and they won't know anything about them. Nothing, nada. They wouldn't even be able to tell you how they drank their coffee or their tea. Nothing. They wouldn't even know that. You know. And on the flip side of that, you've got the overt type who are extremely, who isolate themselves on purpose. You know, they don't want a lot of contact with people. You know, they prefer to be alone. You know, it's quite the contrast. You know. So, when you're looking for signs and symptoms, you've also got to look out for things like that as well. It's one thing to be very sociable, it's another thing for nobody to know anything about you. You know, everybody's concerned about somebody who isolates themselves. You should also be concerned about somebody that nobody knows anything about, you know. So, if we're looking at signs and symptoms of how this condition presents itself, we're looking at things like avoiding social activities or not expressing any strong emotions. You know, they have little interest or any sexual desire. You know, so they don't desire any kind of sexual relationship at all. So not only do they not have any real strong emotion, they have no desire for any kind of sexual relationship. So they don't have partners, they don't have girlfriends, boyfriends, and even if maybe one of them did, there's no intimacy in that. None. You know. Which, okay, you can make the joke about being married, you know, because, you know, if you be in a relationship for long enough, or if you get married, that goes cold, blah, 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 blah. You can make that joke. But this goes beyond that, you know. It's like, even outside of all of that, they have no desire at all. It goes beyond the asexual kind of thing, where, I mean, they're beyond asexual. They don't want it. They have, it's almost, they're almost asexual. Maybe even not even that. You know. Weird concept. But asexuals can have this, just get off track for a minute, but asexuals can have this moment where they want a sexual or have asexual desires, and they do have that kind of thing, but it's rare and it's very far in between. It's on their terms and in their way. They lead very kind of healthy relationships, they just don't have that desire to be intimate on a normal, very often. They will do it, they do get that kind of feeling. My son is asexual, he's very open about it, he's very honest about it. It suits me just fine, I don't mind. I mean, as a parent, I have no issue with that. I mean, quite frankly, he's nearly 20. The fact that he's asexual and not bringing girls home, I like that. As a mother, I am very happy about that. As a mother, I am very, very happy about that. He's very honest about it. He tells everybody. Anybody who knows him, and some who don't actually, he's told all sorts of people. It's quite impressive, actually. He makes no secret of it. It's quite impressive how many people he's told. But as a mother, I am very happy about that fact. Probably happier than I should be. But they do have that desire sometimes, and it's just not what normal people feel. Anyway, back on track. Here we go. Signs and symptoms of let's get back on track, shall we? Anyway. So we're looking at things like the emotional coldness or detachment in somebody with schizoid personality. You're definitely looking at a coldness or a detachment. Somebody with schizoid personality, they are very kind of, you would almost see them as very cold-hearted. There's no emotional warmth there. They're very detached from people. They struggle with social cues. They have a confusion. They experience confusion with social cues, and don't always know how to respond to them. Because social cues confuse them, they can't always respond to them very well, so they don't always know how to deal with social cues. It's a massive issue for them, which could also explain why a lot of them will isolate themselves. If they don't understand the social cues, or it confuses them so much, you can understand why they would want to isolate themselves a lot, why they don't want to be around people. It's not easy when you don't understand the social cues. It's frustrating and it's scary, and it's one of those things that you want to just sort of wish you could learn and wish you could understand. And when it just gets really confusing, your head kind of goes, But yeah. So you can almost understand why they almost always choose solitary jobs or activities. Again, another sign and symptom of it. It's what they do because it makes them feel more secure in themselves if they do not have to interact with people. One thing I did see that I felt was a bit, they feel very unmotivated. There's no motivation in them. They have this. They're unmotivated. They underperform in either school or work, which I did find kind of interesting. Schizoid personality does not come to this. It does not feel, from what you see here, there's nothing here that shows that they have any kind of depressive traits. They don't have this kind of loneliness. It's not something you can turn around and say there's no reason for them to feel unmotivated by. You don't look at these symptoms and go, why would you feel unmotivated? Yeah, I mean, you've got symptoms like they enjoy, I mean, they do enjoy a few activities. Some don't. There are a few people with schizoid that don't have very many activities that they enjoy, but they are all always like solo activities. Um, they are indifferent to praise and criticism. And although they are unable to experience pleasure, it's something they, you could almost say it's something they were born with. You look at some of these symptoms and go, were they born with these kind of things? You know, when they value independence, because they value independence. I mean, it's part of one of their symptoms is that they actually value independence. How can that make you unmotivated? But then when you're saying things like they experience confusion in society, you can imagine that that could be a reason. When they're feeling like society confuses them, maybe that's the reason they prefer to be alone. Why they avoid society, it might be the reason they avoid society and therefore feel unmotivated. You know, it's really strange because none of these, when you look at it, I mean, we see motivated people in like depressions, anxieties, in other conditions that are very kind of, I mean, we see it in bipolar. We see it in conditions that are very kind of filled with kind of deep emotion. You know, to see it in a condition that has no real emotion attached to it is quite amazing. You know, but it makes you question how that can happen. You know, why do they feel so unmotivated? What is it that kind of clicks in their brain that makes them go, I have no energy for this, I don't want to do this, I can't deal with this right now. So they underperform in everything. You know, is it because are we seeing that because society confuses them? Therefore they feel alone, feel like society doesn't want them around. And if they feel like that, that's the reason they're isolating. That's the reason they don't have the need or the want to become sociable. And yet, in the covert side of schizoid personality, they are quite sociable. Well, they seem to be very sociable. So again, you have to kind of wonder what it is that makes them feel so unmotivated. Because I can't, I'm not 100% sure I can see all of it, the whole reason for it, but I couldn't find a lot of reasons why that could happen. But when I was doing a lot more, obviously as I researched it and everything else, we found like looking for like causes of it and stuff like that. The causes, there are theories. There are theories on the cause of it, but they don't actually know. They actually don't know what causes it. It's an unknown cause. They think it's being considered, it's being thought that it's a response to learning behaviours or chromosomal or nervous system disorder, which is actually kind of interesting because if it's because of a learning disorder or some kind of nervous system disorder or like chromosomal, I mean chromosomal, I actually did look that up. It's more to do with like DNA and stuff like that, which actually is kind of cool. And if that's the case, there's like a genetic link you know, or like a genetic mutation. But a nervous system disorder, I've never heard of a nervous system disorder. I'm going to look them up. And then they thought it might be caused by a deficiency in their ego development. But they can't prove any of it. So, I mean, they've got theories as to why or how it's caused, but they can't actually prove any of it. They are working on it, they are doing research on it, but the research they have done suggests it's associated with schizophrenia, which is bizarre because everything I'd done before that has told me that it's not connected that way to schizophrenia, which I found really interesting. But it was only because they share certain risk factors. Now, when they say that it shares risk factors, they are talking about things like the environment, the family, the genetics. They're talking about things that like that. They're talking about the high risk factors. And these were the risk factors that I found, right? And this is the reason why they think it's associated, and it's only because of these risk factors, right? It's because the risk factors are if it's present in a parent or close relative, like so if they have either schizophrenia or if they're on the schizophrenia spectrum or have schizoid personality disorder. If you grow up with a parent or carer who is either cold or unresponsive to your emotional needs, okay, which makes sense, has a hypersensitivity or is thick-skinned in early teens, and they are treated with scorn and annoyance. So if you're a teenager who is being treated with, by people around you with scorn and annoyance and ignorance and horror, and you are super sensitive, so you are a very sensitive, thin-skinned person, not thick-skinned, thin-skinned person, and you get upset really, really easily, and the people who are supposed to care about you treat you with nothing more than annoyance and scorn just because you're being upset over things that you can't control. That could be it. And again, suffers a form of abuse or neglect as a child. Now that is what they are referring to when they when they say it's associated with schizophrenia, purely because of those risk factors. That is the only thing. And then because it's not the same. They did distinguish that. Every single thing that I've come across has blatantly stated it is not the same and not disabling, which is really interesting again, because we've got a very unmotivated set of people, and yet this is not disabling. They do know it originates within the family and childhood environment. What is the only thing they know about this condition? I'm going to leave that here a minute. I'll finish this bit and leave it here. There is a preventative measure that they have come across. Is the provision of a nurturing and emotionally stimulating upbringing, where children can freely kind of be themselves. Now, when I looked at that, I saw this concept of gentle parenting, but I don't think that's what it meant. There's no way that it meant this concept of gentle parenting. What it means is they grow up in a healthy learning environment. You can teach your children you can be loving, respectful and nurturing without being completely, without allowing your children the free will and the freedom to, run the household, which is exactly how it works with gentle parenting, I've noticed. Gentle parents have a tendency to let their children run the household because they don't say no to their children. There are a few examples around where I live of gentle parenting, and their kids are a nightmare. Their kids are horrible. When you watch 3-year-olds running up and down a street at like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and there's no parents in sight, it's horrible. It's terrifying. And the amount of times I wanted to go out and sort of find out where the friggin' hell they lived, because it's dark and horrible, and they're out on their own, and they're young, and it's not nice sometimes. But you can be a great parent without letting your children do exactly as they please. You can give boundaries, rules, regulations. You can instill respect into your children without letting them go overboard and without allowing them the free will to do exactly as they please. It can happen. It does happen. I mean, we all grew up, in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s. You have people that grew up in the 60s, people growing up in like the 40s. You have people in, my gran, bless her soul, she survived. I mean, she went to school and got her hands whacked because she couldn't do numbers. She survived, turned into an amazing human being. You don't have to be a hideous parent and beat your children black and blue, but you don't have to be a parent that allows your children to run ragged either. There is a boundary there, and it does work. It always works if you do it right. And none of us are perfect, and we've all made mistakes. Trust me, we've all made mistakes. I've made more mistakes than I care to admit sometimes. It's not easy admitting when you're wrong. It's not easy admitting that you've screwed up in the way you've taught your children and parented as a human being, But I've made some freaking horrible mistakes and learned from them and changed, and I now have a fairly decent 19, 20-year-old kid who's autistic and a gentleman and pretty honest to a degree, and despite the mistakes I've made and the issues I face, there's a lot that I can't take back, and there's a lot that I can't undo, and there's a lot that I can't even remember doing, but he can. It's not easy being a parent, but it is worth it if it's done right. And it is worth it if we acknowledge that we're allowed to make mistakes as parents. And not only are we allowed to make mistakes as parents, but we have the right to fix those mistakes. Anyway, I'm going to go. And I shall see you all tomorrow for the next part, because I've waffled a bit. Bye.